The video you're about to watch will include many spoilers and much detail for The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2. If you haven't played these games before, I encourage you to play them before watching this. Because for one, it's a fantastic series, and two, it's without debate that it's best to go into either with no knowledge of how the plot plays out. And my second warning is that the way I say a lot of my points seems in a way that I'm saying that my opinion and interpretations are the only correct ones. I don't believe this in the slightest. I just don't want to have to say, in my opinion, before every sentence in a video that is representing 100% my opinions. And a bonus warning. My pop filter is on its way.
If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. Everything I have found here, I'm not found by myself. Try and sometimes you'll succeed to make this man of me. All my stolen missing parts, I've no need for any more. 'Cause I believe, and I believe 'cause I can see our future days, days of you and me. There you go.
Well, that didn't suck.
Welcome. This is a controversial video. It will be very opinionated and will include personal feelings, views, and interpretations of the story of The Last of Us Part 2. It will not reflect your opinions exactly, and will not reflect your interpretations exactly. And I'm not making this video to change opinions, and I can't change interpretations because they're your interpretations. After all, differing opinions are what makes the gaming industry improve as a whole. This is my 2 cents on a current controversial topic in the industry, and I just want to share. Quickly going through a few aspects that aren't exactly story related first. The graphics in this game are literally the best I've ever seen in a video game, ever. The attention to detail in this game is something to behold. Every animation is near perfect, from Ellie grabbing an item and putting it in her backpack, to something so small such as Abby actually visibly using an individual finger to flip the select fire switch on her rifle. Abby visibly experiencing vertigo, and so on. Nearly every animation in this game is perfect. It should create a real standard that all AAA games should be held to.
Nothing to it.
Gameplay is great. Combat isn't the best we've ever seen, but it's still solid, similar to the first. It's incredibly intense.
Shit. Fuck me.
A few new mechanics have been added to make gameplay more realistic, such as proning, using tall grass and foliage to hide in, having to pull out arrows once you've been shot by them, etc. The sound design in this game is immaculate. The puzzles are engaging and challenging, yet fun and rewarding.
Yes. Actually worked.
The game makes you feel like you're a real survivor. Ammo is very hard to come by, supplies aren't just laid out for you, and exploring is rewarded with more supplies. This is definitely shown in the harder difficulties of the game. It's a true survival horror game. The world building of this game is incredible. The environments are not only stunning graphically, but the design of these environments also astonishingly encapsulates what I think a world ridden with a mind-controlling virus would look like. None of the collectibles are pointless. They all add to the lore of this post-apocalyptic world. It makes you feel like these are real events you're experiencing, that this fictional world you're walking through is real. All these aspects have a role in creating this game's incredible feeling, an aspect of entertainment I love to talk about, and something I look for in any medium, from video games to theme parks, and that's immersion. Immersion is a massive component I always look for in a game. Can it really make me feel like I am this character exploring this world in this story? And The Last of Us Part 2 hits the nail straight on the head with this. Another thing I'd like to address is how important the settings of this game are. Gamers with disabilities very often struggle to find games that are fully accessible to them, and The Last of Us Part 2 has been regarded as the most accessible game of all time by many gamers with disabilities, including blind gamer Steve Saylor, who broke down crying when first going into the settings of the game. I encourage you to watch his video on his channel, fully exploring the settings of this game. He can explain how important this is for gamers with disabilities much better than I can. All those things are great, but they're not what is currently under scrutiny. I think we all can agree on those aspects being what is great about this game. The story is what you clicked on this video for. And I want to say before you comment on this video, if you fully reviewed and judged this game off of the leaks that came out in April, it's going to be impossible for me to take your opinion seriously. It doesn't help if you haven't even played the game either. So here it is. I think this story is phenomenal. It starts us right where we left off, showing Joel after the events of the first game, talking to Tommy about what happened in Salt Lake City.
I don't know what happened. I was supposed to take her to the Fireflies and walk away. You go halfway across the country with someone. She needed her immunity to mean something. Maybe I was starting to buy into that old cure business. Maybe I just wanted to do right by her. And then we made it. We found the Firefly. Because of her, they were actually going to make a cure. The only catch, it would kill her. Sweet Jesus.
Doctor?
What are you doing? I won't let you take her. This is our future. Think of all the lives we'll save.
Jesus Christ, Joel. What do you do?
I saved her. Come on, baby girl. I got you. I got you.
Cover the exit. Don't let him get away.
God damn. That's that's a lot. What does Ellie know?
I told her they just ran some tests. I told her her immunity meant nothing.
This interaction kicks off this game perfectly, retouching on the events of the first game in such a real interaction between the two Miller brothers. These real interactions were such a staple of the first game, it's great to start this game off with one.
I didn't say otherwise.
We should head back.
The two ride back to Jackson, and as the two are going through the front gates, Tommy says,
About what we were talking about earlier. I can't say I'd have done different. I'll take it to the grave if I have to.
retouching on that theme of the first game, personal connection versus greater good, which will once again be explored and the repercussions of Joel for picking personal connection. But the prologue of this game isn't over yet. We then move to Joel touching in with Ellie, and an awkward father-early adolescence-daughter relationship ensues.
Jesus. Almost gave me a heart attack.
I tried knocking, but
Hey,
hey,
what's up, Joel?
just checking in.
Joel plays a song on his guitar, an acoustic cover of Future Days by Pearl Jam, that will be replayed again throughout the game, and yes, I did ugly cry every time I heard it after this.
I surely lose myself. She's yours.
No. No. I don't know the first thing
I
about
promised
this.
that I'd teach you how to play.
You did.
He gives that guitar to Ellie and tells her he's going to teach her to
Say
play,
tomorrow night, first
like he did at the end of the first game, and he leaves on a dad joke.
What is the downside to eating a clock? It's time consuming.
That's so dumb.
Yeah. Good night, kiddo.
A simple, yet incredible introduction. I don't think I have to say this, but a staple of the first game, and done even better in this game, is the humanizing of all of these characters. Every character interaction feels real. They don't feel like a script. They feel like true human interaction. They feel real. Humanizing characters leads me to Abby. Abby is clearly the most controversial aspect of this game. One, obviously because she killed Joel.
Joel, please get up!
And two, you almost play half of the game as Abby. And these sections of the game are looked down upon,
This is just your
and
sneaky way
people
of
say
being
that
a
they're
tracking
useless,
weapon, isn't
but
it?
I completely disagree. When you look at the themes of this game, I think playing as Abby makes this journey whole. Abby is the one who kills Joel. Why? Joel killed her dad. But Joel didn't just kill her dad. Joel killed the only person who would have saved the world from this infection, that at this point I'm sure has killed billions. The entire game is exploring the ethics of this apocalyptic world. The question of how is an action right or wrong if everyone is just trying to survive. If we never played as Abby and heard her story, this question would never be posed, and we would just have a boring story about plain old hell-bent revenge, but Naughty Dog didn't want that. The first Last of Us game wasn't made to just play and not question the ethics of the characters, and this one isn't either. The first Last of Us specifically explores the ethics of personal connections versus the greater good. The Last of Us Part 2 questions ethics in general, the right and the wrong. Is there a right and a wrong in a post-apocalyptic world? If we don't play as Abby, and truly let Donnie Dog humanize that character, then she's nobody. This revenge story has no meaning besides Ellie being angry. If we play 24 hours as Ellie, there's no point to this story. It's just someone getting revenge. But since we do play as Abby, since we do humanize her character, the story of Ellie versus Abby has actual meaning. She killed our beloved character Joel, and they didn't justify her for doing so, and they didn't want us to sympathize with her. They asked the question, was she wrong for doing so? And they leave this question up to the player to decide, just like they did with Joel's decision in the first game. The Last of Us is a series that revolves around ethics, and playing as Abby makes us question why we're doing what we're doing as Ellie. I will say that some of these sections with Abby really drag along and are pretty boring. But to say that playing as Abby and seeing the world through her eyes is pointless, that's completely missing the message of the game, completely missing the ethical dilemmas posed. Is there a right and wrong in this apocalyptic world? Is there even a sense of ethics? Or is it just all survival? You don't play as Abby just because they wanted to make the game longer. Abby's characterization is crucial to us as the players questioning the ethics of the entire situation. Just as playing through the entire first game up to that point when Joel is in the surgery room. The characterization and humanization of Abby makes the player question their own motivations in the story. Abby killed Joel. At first, we all want to kill her, but instead of letting you go on a mindless rampage to kill this woman, the game poses the question of, why is one action wrong but another action is right simply because you have a connection to that person? The death of Joel is the most contentious event in the entire game. First of all, I personally believe his trusting of the wolves is entirely believable, which I know this is a very hot take, but hear me out. It's been 4 years since the end of The Last of Us, and since then, he's been living in Jackson, a very safe, welcoming community, a society where there is no more society, a complete 180 of the dynamic he was living with before and during the first game. I wouldn't say it's totally uncharacteristic of Joel to trust these people, uncharacteristic compared to the first game, but the situation he's in now is completely different, so I feel it's honestly hard to compare the two. The first game is Joel at his most vulnerable. He's traveling across the United States in an apocalyptic world, trying to protect a girl he begins to see as another daughter. It's not a characteristic of him to not be trusting in this time, it's human nature to not be trusting in this time. At the beginning of part 2, we see Joel at his least vulnerable. He's been living in Jackson for 4 years. Clearly he feels the safest and most settled that he's ever been since Outbreak Day. We've never seen a settlement as safe as Jackson. And Tommy's been here since he left the Fireflies, and I don't know if it's ever mentioned how long ago that was. Tommy has clearly recruited many people into this community before. And another thing about Joel trusting Abby and the wolves is that Tommy and Joel didn't even know that Abby had a group when they first gave their names. And it wasn't even Joel who gave their names. It was freaking Tommy.
Hey, I'm Tommy. That's Joel. What's your name?
Abby.
Abby, are you okay?
They did just survive an entire infected horde with Abby. They almost have to trust them in this situation as well. Going back to Jackson at this point is not an option. And going back to a point I made earlier, saying that Abby killed Joel because Joel killed her dad is just plain wrong. Joel didn't just kill Abby's dad, Joel killed the hope of the world and society ever fully recovering from this infection. Everybody in that room would have killed Joel. I think anybody in the world who has been surviving in this apocalyptic world would have happily killed Joel had they known what he did. Explored later in a conversation between Abby and Mel, they're discussing the turmoil between the two, and the discussion turns to what happened in Jackson.
Hey, why have you been avoiding me? I wasn't avoiding you. Come on, you've barely said anything to me since Jackson.
I don't know. I guess I was shook by Jackson, too.
You don't think Joel deserved what he got?
I think he deserved worse. I just wish I didn't take part in it.
I get it. What kind of a person could do that, right?
I'm not saying that.
Let's see if there's a way to the hatch.
Abby was just the one to pull the trigger. So from a logical standpoint in this story, I do believe this death was justified. Now how it affects the story. In a series that poses so many ethical questions, it's impossible to do so without death and despair. In my opinion, the story and the way Naughty Dog tells their story, and the ethical questions they pose in this game are not possible without the death of one of the two main characters. The first Last of Us is so emotional and thematic, and to continue on this storytelling, the killing off of Joel and watching Ellie deal with the grief and trauma of it, it goes without saying that it's very risky, but it's the most effective way of doing so. As I've mentioned before, the first game is exploring the ethics of an apocalyptic world. The right and the wrong. Is there a right and the wrong? Were the cannibals horrible people, or did they just find a less than ideal means of survival? Was Joel right for saving Ellie, or was he being incredibly selfish? Was Joel right to lie about it? These ethical questions and many more are posed in the first game. And seeing the criticism towards part 2 has led me to believe that a lot of people either don't want to understand or just plain didn't understand the entire point of the first game. To watch realistic, dramatic scenarios unfold and as the player question whether those actions were right or wrong. And these questions have no definitive answer. The discussion and contemplation of the ethics is the entire point. The Last of Us takes the fascinating human discussion of ethics that is in our everyday lives, by the way. All of politics are a discussion of ethics after all. And it puts this discussion into video game form, posing countless ethical questions throughout the journey of Ellie and Joel. These are not face value games. These are not games that are made to be analyzed by the key events alone. They're games that have real meaning in the real world. They're made to question the ethics of all characters. Question the ethics of our reality. The first game is praised for humanizing its characters. Naughty Dog goes to that extent to humanize these characters because it heavily supports posing these ethical questions. Like I said before, the entire first game leads up to the scene in the surgery room in St. Mary's. The entire purpose of your whole journey to that point is so that a real-life ethical question can be posed. And like all the other ethical dilemmas posed, there's no definitive answer to this question. It's posed for the player to contemplate and discuss. If you didn't understand this purpose of the first game, then no, you will not understand this game, and you're going to despise it. You're going to think this writing is weak, because The Last of Us Part 2 only adds on to the ethical questions posed by its predecessor. And it does so in a way that is absolutely beautiful and absolutely realistic through grief. The grief of Ellie caused by Joel's death. The grief of Abby caused by her father's death.
Abby.
No!
Abby, don't look.
Dad! Dad! No!
The grief of the death of the world. The Last of Us Part 2 explores the theme of grief stronger than any entertainment in any medium has before. This ending caps off such an emotional and thematic story perfectly. Back at the theater, Abby has infiltrated where the Jackson crew is hiding. When we first play this part as Ellie, Jesse's shot dead before we even have time to process what is actually going on. Tommy's being held at gunpoint and Ellie surrenders. This is when we go back in time 3 days and play these 3 days as Abby. And when we arrive back to this point as Abby, all hell breaks loose for Ellie. Jesse is dead. Abby shoots Tommy in the head and we assume he's dead. He's not, but Abby did nick his eye pretty good. And we don't know where Dina is. And a battle between Ellie and Abby ensues. And the player is controlling Abby. The pinnacle of this question of why is one correct in what they're doing and the other is not. Dina eventually shows herself in this battle, attempting to help Ellie, but it doesn't work out very well. And after all of this, Ellie has been beaten nearly to death by Abby, and Abby lets her live again. My interpretation as to why is because she began to be clouded by grief again, but Lev grounded her into deciding against her vengeful instinct. She's killed Joel. She's felt the grief of the loss of her father at the hands of another man, and she got her revenge on that man. and she learned it didn't change the fact that she still hurts from the loss of her father. It's such a realistic representation of grief and closure. So she knows that killing Ellie won't change the grief of her friends, just like killing Joel didn't change the grief of what happened to her father, or how Joel took away the chance of the world recovering. But Ellie, as we find out, isn't as nearly emotionally experienced. After this exchange, Ellie, Dina, and Jesse's child, JJ, are now living on a farm, as they mentioned they would like to do in the open world section of the chapter Seattle Day 1. It seems as if Ellie is done with this revenge plot. She starts having PTSD flashbacks of Joel being killed and realizes she still wants revenge. She's still blinded by this grief of Joel's death, as Abby was to her father's death. It's why she's shown playing a guitar when she wakes the night after her post-traumatic incident. Because the guitar is not just a good memory of Joel, the guitars in this game are a motif of the cloud of grief that has blinded Ellie this entire journey. There are guitars seemingly everywhere Ellie goes, but she finally leaves hers behind at the very end, to symbolically leave behind that horrible cloud of grief that has followed and clouded Ellie's judgment the entire story. Ellie is broken, and she feels the only way to fix her is to fulfill her revenge on Abby.
I have to finish it.
So Ellie tracks down Abby again, at the expense of her relationship with Dina, all the way to sunny Santa Barbara, California, where she finally finds Abby, who has been captured by post-apocalyptic slavers. It turns out, Abby's tried to escape unsuccessfully, and the game makes it very prevalent that the slavers do not take kindly to their slaves trying to escape. Ellie makes her way through some of these slavers, and frees some of the slaves in the process. Freed slaves are the ones who tell Ellie of Abby's location, that she's being left for dead, and that Ellie would be lucky to still find her alive. Ellie makes it down to the beach and finds Abby. Abby is beaten, bruised, and in the most vulnerable and weak state we've ever seen her in. Ellie cuts her down, where she could have just let her die. But she wanted the real revenge. She wanted to be the one to kill her, to achieve that closure.
Yes, you will.
Ellie vs. Abby Part 2 ensues. They have what is probably the most emotional fight yet. Ellie loses a couple fingers, but she finds the upper hand, and finally has Abby's life at her disposal. She has another flashback as she's about to drown Abby on the coast. This time, not of Joel's murder, but of Joel sitting on his porch. She has a flashback of her last interaction with Joel, and she stops. She lets Abby go. She doesn't kill Abby and fulfill that revenge she's been yearning for. She lets Abby live. And Ellie sits as Abby and Lev leave in a boat, assumingly never to be seen by Ellie again. Everything Ellie's gone through throughout the story has led to this. Every flashback we've played through has led to this. She sits as she finally realizes what her journey has been actually about. After we watch Abby and Lev leave, and Ellie sitting there for a few moments, the game cuts to Ellie returning to her and Dina's farmhouse. Dina has abandoned it, assumingly have returned to Jackson. But Ellie goes upstairs and finds that her art room was untouched in the move. Ellie finds her guitar and begins playing that acoustic cover of Future Days by Pearl Jam. The one that Joel played for her at the very beginning of the game. The song about finding that person that truly makes you happy, that gives you purpose in life. The song that perfectly describes Joel's relationship towards Ellie. And now that Ellie has gone through this journey, she and the audience realize it perfectly describes the other way around. Without Joel, she would have nothing she now has in her life. Everything that makes her happy that she has is a result of Joel, including Joel. And she stops as she's about to sing the lyrics. We now get the full flashback that Ellie saw as she was about to kill Abby. Joel and Ellie's final interaction before Joel's untimely death.
Hey.
What are you drinking?
Coffee.
Where'd you get that?
Those people that came through last week.
Oh.
A little embarrassed as to what I had to trade to get it, but it's not bad.
I had Seth under control.
Yeah, I know.
And you need to stop harassing Jesse about my patrols.
Okay. Dina. Is she your girlfriend?
No. No, that was just one kiss. It doesn't mean anything. I don't know why she did that.
But you do like her.
So stupid.
I have no idea what that girl's intentions are, but I do know that she would be lucky to have you.
You're such an asshole.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
Yeah. I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I'd like that.
Okay. I'll see you around.
Yep.
And after this, I finally realized why Ellie let Abby live. She finally realized that killing Abby wasn't going to bring Joel back. It wasn't going to make her feel any better. After all, killing all of Abby's friends didn't make her feel any better. She realized that her hatred for Abby was hatred for herself. She hated herself because Joel died thinking that Ellie hated him. She hated herself for not creating more enjoyable times with Joel. That was the whole point of the Natural History Museum flashback, to show one of these enjoyable times. She hated herself most of all for not forgiving him. She finally understood why Joel did what he did. She finally realized that she would have done the same if the roles were reversed. She finally forgave him. She found the real closure she was looking for. She is finally clear of this cloud of grief that has blinded her throughout the entire game. Her sparing of Abby is forgiving Abby for killing Joel, forgiving Joel for saving her, and most importantly, forgiving herself for being too naive to understand and forgive Joel all at once. And she finally finds closure and resolve of Joel's death, something that many people never find when they lose a loved one. I haven't sworn this entire video, but it's a fucking phenomenal representation of the theme of grief, like we've seen in no entertainment medium before. The way Ellie smells Joel's jacket in his closet just to figuratively feel him again. This is the moment that I first saw this and was in complete awe at how they had already established such an understanding of losing someone. The clip's now at 500% speed, and I won't even show the whole clip because it would still be too long for this video even that fast. It was difficult for me to even comprehend such a thing in a video game. The way Ellie begins to play Future Days in the music store, but then plays something different when Dina reveals herself to be listening, because Future Days is a special thing she had with Joel, and she doesn't want to lose that.
What was that?
Nothing.
Well, nothing sure sounds nice.
Remember that night by the bonfire?
Yeah.
Talking away. I don't know what I'm to say. I'll say it anyway. Today's another day to find you shying away.
And the biggest representation, the way Ellie is constantly looking for closure the entire game. This ending will be very hard to understand if you've never experienced true sorrow like Ellie has. It is a fantastic thematic ending to a fantastic thematic story. And I will dare to say that this ending, an ending that is being regarded by the masses as one of the worst and most inconclusive that they've come across, is in truth the most powerful, the most emotionally and thematically deep, and the greatest ending that the gaming industry has ever had the privilege of experiencing. It is absolutely phenomenal. I'm aware that most people have not interpreted this game's story in the same way that I did. I do think a lot of the hate for this game is a result of the leaks giving people the wrong idea of this game, and that idea never leaving people's minds.
What's this?
I do think everybody should play it for themselves before judging it. To analyze this game's story for its face value and its key events alone shows that you didn't understand the first game, because the first game was not a face value game either, and if you thought it was, then frankly, you didn't understand the real meaning behind it. And this game is even further from a face value game. It's a game that's meant to be analyzed. The themes and ethical dilemmas are meant to be explored by each individual player, not watch someone else explore them. Everything I've said in this video, and most things unrelated to the story that I haven't mentioned, are the reasons that I truly think this is one of the greatest video games ever made. Video games are not on the same level as film and television when it comes to portraying real-world themes, ethics, and emotions. They just aren't. But The Last of Us Part 2 not only meets that level, but absolutely exceeds it. I believe the storyline is phenomenal, and I believe it's ahead of its time in the gaming industry. This game is substantially more than just a revenge story. It pushes every conceivable boundary of storytelling. It's not a perfect game, as I believe there's no such thing, but The Last of Us Part 2 is a masterpiece for its incredible, thematic, emotional story, its phenomenal ending, and its near-perfect technological aspects in terms of game development. And I honestly think and hope after the dust settles, people will look at this game and realize its true meaning and find the true beauty and greatness of it. That's my 2 cents on what is my favorite game of all time. Let me know how you interpreted the story. If you like this video, well, I don't really have any other videos even close to similar to this one, but you can check them out anyways. But I guess give me a suggestion for my next one. Thanks for watching and hearing me out. I hope you can find the beauty and enjoyment that I found in this game, because there really is a lot of it.
Jesus.